We do this every year at this time to honor National Rehab Week. So across the country, different rehab hospitals are recognizing this week different ways. Some people do an awareness day. Some people, might do a fundraiser. We want to celebrate with you because this is about you. You're our patients. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason that the staff are here. And I'm the reason that they're here. So you're here and I'm here for the same reason. We're all here together to try and improve our functional status after an injury, a disability, a trauma. And it's a journey that keeps going. So every year when you come back, it's about that journey that you're still on. Because for some of you, you're still living with some of those disabilities or some of those weaknesses, some of those issues. But when you're here, we're all the same. Margaret Mead once said, we're all unique individuals and we're all the same unique individuals. So we all have our own something that we bring to the table. So every year, staff come and go, but the family stays the same. Each piece of the puzzle makes it a whole. And I get to stand up here, but it's all of them that make it work. And it's all of them that help in your recovery. So they let me be the spokesperson. I think most of them don't want to do this. I don't know why, but it's all about them. And so please give them a round of applause because they're a fabulous crew. So now I get to introduce my boss, Dr. Joseph Paris, who's probably been on like his 5th speech this week. I don't know. I asked him to come out and say hello to you all. He's been our CEO. He's been with Mount Scottney since 2013. He's been our CEO for 2.5 years. Seems like he's always been our CEO in a good way. He's helping make changes in our system and grow and keep our voice at the table. So please let me introduce Joe Paris.
Thank you. And sadly, Belinda was right. There's been a lot of speeches this week, but this is the kind of get together that reminds me why I was a doctor first, an administrator second, third, and fourth. I'll start with how the morning began. My wife is a school nurse, gets up a little bit before me, and we're socked in with fog, and she says, do you know what the weather's going to be like? And I said, I don't know. I grabbed my phone and scroll. I was just about to check the weather app, and then I just checked my calendar first. I said, today's a rehab reunion. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be beautiful. Don't bring a winter coat to work today. As I said, I spent the morning up in White River Junction testifying for a Vermont Senate Economic Development and Workforce Committee. You can imagine how thrilling that was. But it's necessary work, and it's that kind of work that allows us to really push on things like affordable housing, which we all need, which our employees need. But again, that kind of stuff can be mind-numbing and over time weigh heavily when someone like myself, who's spent their whole career caring for people, including some of you in the audience, you forget why we do the work that we do when you start to wear a suit every day. But as I was walking into the hospital after parking, I was behind a former patient who I believe is here in the audience, who I cared for briefly in a moment of probably not the best time for him. And I was giving one of our guests today a tour, and I saw the person again in our rehab gym. And I said, "Do you remember me?" And he looked over and he said, "Yeah, I remember you. That was that night my blood sugar was so low and you were trying to wake me up." I said, "Yeah, that was me." So that's great. And it was just another reminder that all the time we sit in meetings and we worry about schedules and who's going to staff this and that. When it gets to the end of it, we're all here to make sure that we fix your blood sugar and we get you back on your feet and we get you moving with our incredible rehab staff. In my role, I give a lot of tours to people, and to a person, they are amazed at the facility that we have, the inpatient gyms, the outpatient gyms, the therapeutic pool. It's really a remarkable resource for Windsor County and for the state. We draw patients from all over New England for our rehab services, and a lot of that comes down to the bedside interaction between nurse and patient. So I'd like to ask for another round of applause for our rehab nurses. And for our therapy staff as well, another round of applause. And I don't want to forget the folks that keep your room clean and bring your fresh linens and do all the little things that play a huge part in our comfort and our progress when patients are referred to us for our services. So for all of our housekeepers, for the folks that work in the pharmacy, for our techs, please, another round. This is always one of my favorite events of the year, and with what little time I do have to still be a doc, I spend most of it on the rehab, covering when Dr. Cruz or Dr. Mason aren't able to care for the inpatients. And it is truly a remarkable experience watching the way a team of providers, and I'd say that the docs probably have one of the smaller roles in helping to make sure you all progress and get to the next stop, whether that be home or for the rehab or another living situation. It is great to see teamwork in play, and the folks in our rehab display that every day. And when I describe this event to other people or when they come visit for the first time, I say, we actually have an event where people come back to celebrate their progress and their recovery and to celebrate the care they received here. Their jaws drop everywhere. If I tell other hospital CEOs, they're shocked. We get so wrapped up in our operations work that we again, like I said earlier, can sometimes forget why we do it all, and it's for you all. So with that, I'll hand it back to Belinda. I thank you all for coming. And if there's anything that we or I can do, my office door is always open. Please, I'm happy to take suggestions and make changes. So thank you.
As Joe said, it takes a team. Again, I'm taking an MBA class, so I was studying Margaret Mead recently, and she has a great quote about, it's amazing what a group of highly committed people with a common purpose can accomplish. And again, that's what rehab is about. It's a team approach. This is a team sport, and you're in the center. So now I'm going to introduce a former patient of ours, Mr. Gottlieb, if he'd like to come on up.
All right, as unaccustomed as I am to public speaking, one of the highlights for me here was when my wife brought my dog to see me. And she's a remarkable dog. We got her locally. I live in Wallingford. And I saw an ad in the paper, and it was, I actually knew the guy that had her, and it said, talking dog, $10, come get her. So, it was right in Wallingford, so I went down there, and it was for Phil Baker was his name. And I said, Phil, where's the dog? And she's out in the garage. So I go out in the garage, and I say, I walk in, and I say, hi, how are you? I said, how you doing? She said, well, I do pretty well. And I said, well, this is unbelievable, a talking dog. So I said, well, what's your deal? Well, I was over in Afghanistan, and I would work for the CIA, and they would, I was like a spy, and I would tell them everything where the Taliban was and where the IEDs were, etc. And they said, oh, boy, that's great. So I go back in, and I say to Phil, you wanted $10 for the dog. And I said, Phil, what is the story, $10 for a talking dog? He looks at me and says, Chip, that dog is a liar. She's never left the garage. So, like I said, I'm from Wallingford, and I grew up in Wallingford from the age of 10 on. And we lived outside the town, so we didn't have cable. We got 2 channels, 3 and 5, and 5 didn't come in. So 3 was CBS, and I've always watched CBS News, and I still do to this day. And recently, on Friday nights, they have a young guy, Steve Hartman, and he had a segment for a while where he would, it was called, I think, This Is Your Story, or everybody has a story. So he would take a dart and he would throw it at a map of the United States, and then he would go to that town, and this is back when they had phone booths. He would go to a phone booth, blindly look up someone's name, and then he would go interview them. And you know, every time that person, there was something remarkable about that person. And you know, by remarkable, I mean something worth discussing. Like I've had MRIs, and you know, I'll say to the radiologist, well, how was it? He said, well, nothing remarkable. So nothing worth talking about. But my point is that everyone has a story. And, you know, this will be mine. Up until this, my journey here, my story would have been that I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I've been clean for, I don't know, the late 80s. And, you know, that would have been my story before I came here. But on Sunday, February 17th, I cross-country skied for 2.5 hours with a friend of mine. Really hard, very hard, because he skates and I don't, and I had trouble keeping up with him. I ran Monday, I ran Tuesday, I ran Wednesday. You know, I'm a real fitness buff. I take care of myself. And Thursday, I came down, the floor felt funny to me. It felt really cold. So I said, well, I'll take today off. And I progressively, you know, started feeling worse. And Friday I went to my primary care, and, you know, this was above his pay grade, but he said, you know, I think you have an impingement, a pinched nerve possibly. So I went home, and it got worse and worse, and I had trouble walking. Saturday I went to the emergency room in Rutland, and it was really bad. And by Sunday night, I'm a mess. You know, I'm just about totally paralyzed. And come Monday, I was totally paralyzed. Just couldn't move, you know, just my head a little bit. You know, I was totally paralyzed. So called my best friend, and he could not get me in the car with my wife. You know, we decided we'd go to Dartmouth Hitchcock, you know, because in Rutland they have one neurologist, and it's very difficult to see her. So we went to Dartmouth Hitchcock, and you know, we had to get the farmer up the road to come help my best friend to get me in the car. So we went to Dartmouth Hitchcock, and right away, you know, they took care of me, brought me in. I was surrounded by neurologists, and I was diagnosed with what's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And that's an immune, the body attacks its immune system and destroys the myelin sheath, which is the covering around the nerve endings. So I was totally paralyzed, and I spent, I think, 9 days in Dartmouth Hitchcock, and they treat this by giving you immunoglobulin therapy, 5 doses of that. And I don't know, y'all have seen neurologists, and honestly, they're an awkward bunch. I'll be honest with you. You know, I mean, they are awkward. You know, all the bow ties and very smart. And, you know, the trouble over there is you don't see the same person, you know, twice. So, you know, after the first dose of it, I'm still totally paralyzed. And the doctor, one of the residents says, "Do you feeling any better?" I said, "Feeling any better?" I said, "No, I don't think it's probably going to happen that quickly for me." You know, they did tell me to a man that I would recover. They didn't tell me how much I would recover, but that I would recover. And so I hung my hat on that. And, you know, I had the 5 doses of that, and the pain was excruciating. The nerve pain and in my back was just excruciating. And they can't give you anything for the pain because they don't want it to get in your respiratory system. They don't want your diaphragm to become paralyzed, because then you have to be on a respirator, and I certainly didn't want to go that route. Got a visit at 3 o'clock in the morning from the head of the ICU. And he said, "Michael," and he said, "I understand you're going to be heading our way." And I said, "Not for nothing, Michael, but I don't want to head your way." I said, "I'm doing my best." So they would check my breathing every 2 hours, and you know, they would take your vitals every hour, hour and a half, or whatever it was. And they, you know, I couldn't get comfortable, so I'm up sitting on the edge of the bed. They would move me on the edge of the bed. And as I believe Dr. Para said, you know, the nurses are where it's at. They really are. And I had some great nurses at Dartmouth. Very good. I had one young kid. He was just starting out. Spent 7 years in the Air Force. Nice kid, and he was very good. I've gone back to see him. And they were good to me. I had one neurologist that I got really friendly with. He sat with me at 3 in the morning and, you know, explained to me why they couldn't give me anything for the pain. And he had a real nice bedside manner. I really, really liked him. So I continue to see him when I see a neurologist. So I spent 9 days there. And then, you know, the first thing, since I have an addictive personality, when they said they were going to give me 5 doses of the IGIV, you know, I wanted more. Because if, with my addictive personality, if 5 is good, 7 has to be much better. You know, and that's the way it was with drinking and drugs with me and everything. So, and they said, no, that's not going to happen. You know, you'll go from here to rehab. So a bed opened up here, and the Windsor Ambulance Service brought me here. Real nice young girl. And I got here, and Heather was on duty. She was an occupational therapist. And to get me from the bed, or from the ambulance to the bed, they used a lift. And she came in and saw that. She said, get that out of here. He's not to be in that again. This is a rehab facility. So I said, boy, I said, here we go. And just as a side note, Heather is the second prettiest girl I've ever showered with. And so I knew right away that we were going to, you know, that things were going to work out here, I hoped. You know, my best friend said I would walk out of here, and I didn't share that optimism. So Tracy checked me in, the physical therapist. She said, what are your goals? And I said, well, if I could get out of here with a walker, I'd be thrilled. And she said, okay. So the team meets in the morning, you know, the team meeting, and they said, well, you're going to be here for 4 weeks. And I said, well, what if I'm not better after 4 weeks? I said, can I pay for a week myself? And they started laughing. They said, well, we've never had anybody offer to do that before. She said it would be very expensive, Dr. Cruz did. And when I was in Dartmouth, I developed a DVT, deep vein thrombosis, you know, a blood clot in my leg. So when I got here, I had a blood clot in my leg, and unbeknownst to me, you know, going to the bathroom was difficult for me, to say the least, you know, to move my bowels. So, and this is the part where I have no filter at all, so I won't apologize, but yeah. But so that was a difficult thing for me. And, you know, so you get laxatives and whatnot. And so finally I do have a bowel movement. And, you know, I couldn't even wheel myself. My arms were working a little bit. I couldn't even wheel myself halfway down the hallway without resting the first day. So I have a bowel movement, and Amy helps me off, and she says, oh my God, you're bleeding internally. I said, what are you talking about? Well, look at your stool. And I said, well, it's a little dark. She said, well, you're bleeding internally. So over to the hospital end I go for an endoscopy, and I had to have 2 units of blood. Dr. Horton was here at the time. He's since moved on to Texas. And I had Gary for a nurse over there. He was great. I had Dr. Palmer, who is just a wonderful man. When Dr. Palmer tells you something, like, you know, I'll look into that and I'll get back to you. You know, I'm surrounded by people that tell me that all the time at work or whatnot, and you never hear from him again. He would come back in and tell me that. Dr. Ip sat with me at 3 in the morning, told me I would get better. And, you know, this was a real low point for me. You know, I had already determined that I could probably make a go of it in a wheelchair, but the pain I was not going to be able to deal with. So I had made plans to kill myself. You know, I had it all figured out. My best friend, I'd borrow a gun from him. I knew right where I was going to go. So I was smart enough to ask for help at that point. So I got a psychologist and a priest. And when I told my best friend that, he said, Chip, do you really think I was going to give you a gun? I said, well, I never thought about that, John. But, you know, and so as soon as I had the blood transfusion and they fixed the upper GI bleed, things really started to pick up for me. I started to be able to move a little bit, but they were tough on me. Luther, once I was going on the, I did a slide board to get out of the chair onto the mat where you do the exercises. And the mat goes up and down, and he had the mat higher than the slide board, and I like to have it level or down. I said, can you move that mat down a little bit? He said, I could, but I'm not going to. Another time I'm walking down the hall, and I'm walking like this. And Luther's behind me. He said, lose the limp. He said, if you walk with a limp, you're going to walk with a limp. So, he was tough, but I really liked him. I liked, Kayla. I got really kind of close with Kayla. I think she had a crush on me. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm convinced that. I never did get to shower with her, but I may leave out some names, but Trisha was very good. Barbie, Dr. Cruz, Amy. But I didn't want to leave here. People talk about, boy, I can't wait till I get home. I couldn't care less about going home. I liked it here. I didn't get half as many phone calls. There weren't half as many business problems. I liked the food. I'm remiss that I never did tell the kitchen that I really liked the food. But when I was in the hospital end, I had to move my bowels. So I ring for the little girl, and it's always little girls. So every time they would do this, I would pretty much cry. I just would. I just got emotional, and I asked them to make sure they could clean me up really well. I'm just a stickler for being clean. So she gets me on, we finally get me on the toilet, and I was going to the bathroom by myself at this point. And so I start to go to the bathroom, and I said, boy, that didn't sound good. She had pulled down my pajama pants, but I never took my underwear down. And that's why it didn't sound good. So now I've got a real problem because, again, I'm a stickler for being clean, and now I've got to figure out how am I going to get these underwear off. So I ring the bell, and the little girl comes in. Oh my God! Well, I'm gonna get some help. So I said, okay. So I thought about it, and I'm sitting there, and I said, well, I'll get a pair of shears and cut these off. So I ring for her again. She said, I'm getting somebody. I said, well, just get me a pair of scissors, and I'll cut these off, and I can raise myself up and it'll be fine. She said, oh my God, you should have been an engineer. But, these are all little girls that are just fabulous. I can't say enough. This place literally, saved my life. And my wife was very good to me. She stood by me the entire time, which is a change, I'll be honest with you. I had a kidney stone once, and we go to the emergency room in Rutland. I'm thrown up on the floor. I'm balled up on the floor. I'm racked in pain. So they put me in a bed. They give me the morphine drip, and my wife, this is 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, of course, and my wife looks at the nurse and says, well, no sense in both of us not sleeping. Call me if he's getting released. So about 4 in the morning, they called her, and she came to get me. But all kidding aside, she was great. My friends were great. My kids shaved me. I have a couple adult kids. They brought their grandchildren here. But if I can just tell you one message, you have a much better opportunity if you're in shape. And I don't think you have to do what I do. I cycle a lot. I skin up mountains. I ski down. I cross-country ski. But, my wife and I walk every morning. If you're in shape and you're ready and something like this crosses your path, you can deal with it a lot better than not. But I'm sure I have left out some people, but I thought this was a remarkable place, and I enjoyed it. And, I'll be honest, I saw God's face in a lot of people along this journey, but none more prevalent than here. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. That was perfect. Okay, we'll talk to Kayla and Heather later in personnel's office. Okay, we'll have to talk about whatever was going on there. Wow, he's got a good memory. I bet some of you can relate to some of those stories too. So I'd like to now introduce Laura Cadmus. So Laura has two purposes here today. She is our chaplain, and she is a caregiver. And so I asked her if she would spend a few minutes talking to you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you, Belinda, for asking. That is a tough story to follow, and I have nothing really to compare to that. But in thinking about this event and really just paying attention to the speakers before me and looking around and listening to and just looking around, kind of paying attention to the side conversations and a couple conversations that I've already had as I kind of wung in here from Dartmouth, where I work the other half of my week. It's really essentially about relationships, and that that we gather and have this kind of a reunion is remarkable. I'll follow on Dr. Paris's talk. You know, this is something that people don't do. I mean, who would want to come to a reunion at a hospital? People want to go home. Oh, the scallops, yes, that is a draw. But you all come, and I know that some of you come year after year after year, and not just patients, but families and friends of patients. And you come because what really matters are those connections, those conversations. I came in here and I just was struck, and it just put a huge smile on my face that I came in on my desk is a vase with a couple roses in it. A gift from somebody for the care that I gave. And that deeply touches me. And I can dare to speak for those of us that are on staff here. I'll dare, is that you all matter to us so deeply. We carry you with us. Our interactions with you are deeply meaningful to us. To have the privilege of caring for you and working with you so that you feel restored, that you have hope, that you walk into the rest of your life, that you rebuild, that you recover, that you find a hope that maybe was a different hope than you actually hoped for, and reframe things is why we show up. And so I thank you for letting us show up. I also am standing here at Belinda's request because my mother was a patient here recently, and I just want to thank Belinda and Dr. Cruz and Emily and everyone who was willing to, and Jill Lord for just being instrumental in receiving my mother here. She's had a lot of issues and been in several rehab units, subacute rehab units, and she was able to come here and by far got the best care and found the most hope, and had more of a bounce in her step, and a restoration of her own sense of self when she left here, when she's been on a trajectory of kind of aging and more hopelessness. This gave her hope again. It gave her life again. And she really bounced back from that. And she came back here again, and is now in a facility that really supports her and is a better living situation for her. So what is at the core of this, and I just want to lift up, that we gather, this remarkable event that we are gathered for here is a reunion. We are coming together because it is essentially the relationships, the stories, the shared experience, the getting to know one another and being with one another in a really profound way that gets us through. And that we can celebrate that today is worthy as anything to celebrate. So I just thank you for the opportunity, and enjoy.
I come home from work 19 years ago, and I had a tremendous headache, and I'm not a headache person. So I went to bed to rest, and 2 weeks later, I woke up at the old Hitchcock, and I was there for a month. I had an aneurysm in my head, and I still have scars and things that go with that. And then I was transported here for 3 weeks, and that's when they brought me back.
Just hold it a little closer, Bob. There you go.
And that's when they brought me back to life. I have a few little stories. My wife came to visit, and she saw that my roommate and I were eating chocolates. And she said, "How come you're eating chocolates?" I said, "Well, I discussed it with my friend, and we decided." Of course, they got chocolates down in Walpole. And so she took my credit card away, and she said, "That's the end of that stuff." But the CEO was right. We're in the wrong area here. We should have your staff here, and we should be thanking them, and we should be observing them. And this is what brings it all together. Thank you for listening to me.
Hi, everyone. This is just so great to be here among so many people. We've all had shared pain and shared trauma, and yet we've come through the other end wiser and I think feeling more blessed to be a part of the community that exists here. I just want to share a story. When I came here, it was after like 7 weeks at DHMC. I had awoken from a coma, had pulmonary embolism, and the first reaction I had was, "Oh, why can't I move my legs?" And so it's been a long road back to being able to walk in here freely. I said to myself, I'm going to go to that reunion, but I'm going to walk in. But the story I want to share is when I was here with my friend Pat. We knew how to tore it up, right, Pat? Yeah, we had a good time. And Pat and I, we would hang out during our free time when we weren't being pushed for therapy. But I remember her grandkids visited, and Walt here, Pat's husband, brought some water guns. And so we were out in the garden having a water gun fight. It was hilarious. I know, right? Yeah. Well, we didn't know if we were breaking the rules, so it was kind of like like a secret water gun fight. Yeah. No, we had a lot of fun. And it's moments like that that make it feel like family. We're all family here, and it's just great to see everyone doing as well as they're doing. So, blessings.
I came by not to say hi to all the people that works here on the back, along with his, but especially the people here, the men and women who had a good with us. And I've been 5 years now and doing better each time. Thank you.
You want me to say something for you? Okay. So Chris and I have known each other a long time. So. Yoga.
Good.
Very good. I put the very in. He said good. I said very good. Swimming.
Best.
Very good. Biking.
Pictures.
Oh, he takes pictures, yes. And poetry. So I've known Chris for 22 years, and Chris has gone from having a very severe stroke and a lot of impairment, and now he is able to live in the community. He does all those things: yoga, swimming, biking. He has his recumbent bike out here. He writes poetry. He takes pictures. He's an amazing guy. The only thing that Chris has going against him is he won't eat carbohydrates. Just saying, I don't know. I got to eat the cookies. But Chris is worth getting to know. So thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Okay, so if nobody else wants to say anything, I'm going to have some of my staff come up so we could do some raffles.